Hi, welcome to Adulting 101. My name is Dr. Ann Jaronski. I'm the director of the YSU Student Counseling Services here. Today, we're going to talk about managing a quarter life crisis during the pandemic. Let me tell you what we're going to do. We're going to divide this up into about three parts, each about 10 minutes long. In the first part, we're going to talk about what is a quarter life crisis, what are some of the common experiences of a quarter life crisis, and how do you know what's normal regarding a quarter life crisis? In the second part, we're going to talk about how you can manage what you're experiencing, how to deal with emotions, recognizing, acknowledging, labeling, and addressing. We're going to talk about different things you can try. And we're also going to talk about what happens if you can't manage on your own. In the third part, we're going to talk about resources, specifically things that you can do on your own. What are some of the campus resources that may help you? And what are some things in the community that may help you deal with a quarter life crisis? So let's get started. Part one, what is a quarter life crisis? So people will often define a quarter life crisis as a period of insecurity, doubt, disappointment surrounding your career, relationships, or potentially a financial situation. Oftentimes, we'll hear about a quarter life crisis happening in your mid to late 20s, although some people say it can actually occur earlier. Any of that sound familiar so far? A quarter life crisis really has to do with lots of thoughts and feelings and comparisons. It's that, am I good enough? It's the coulda, shoulda, wouldas. It's the what if. It's comparing yourself to others, especially on social media. We can do that a lot. Feeling like we don't measure up, feeling like you're fearing missing out on things. Specifically, what happens if for those feelings where I thought my life was going to be at this point isn't what's really happening in my life. So those kinds of disconnects between our expectations of who we should be, how we should be, and what is actually happening, or how we feel about what's actually happening in our life might be a good way to understand a quarter life crisis. Some of the common experiences that people will describe in a quarter life crisis are things like burnout, that sense of, I just don't want to do this anymore. I've been doing this school a really long time, and I'm not as motivated. I'm not as interested. Maybe I'm not as interested in my field of study as I thought. The same thing can be true for a work experience or an internship. People are having an internship and just feeling like they're not into it as much as they used to be, and can be said for a relationship. Feelings of anxiety. Again, that sense of, this is not what I expected. My day to day is not satisfying. It's causing me stress. It's causing me anxiety. I worry about this. Again, that sense of, am I good enough? Feelings of grief, that the transitions in our lives, like a graduation, which we have expectations about what that should be like and how we should feel, and they don't measure up. Leaving things behind, a change in identity, being concerned about jobs, finding jobs, whether or not jobs are satisfying in the way that you thought they might be, or do they pay enough to pay your bills? Feelings of anger or frustration, or even fear. Those are really common experiences and feelings in a quarter life crisis. Overall, there is that sense of struggling for meaning and purpose. Is this what I thought it was going to be? Am I contributing? And am I contributing in ways that I thought I would? Those are really common kinds of experiences. Okay, now let's overlay what's currently going on in the world with the COVID-19 pandemic. That absolutely potentially exacerbates things for people who might be at a transition time in their life, questioning pieces of their life, or having a quarter life crisis. One of the ways to possibly understand how this current pandemic is influencing us or could be exacerbating it is to overlay the framework of grief and loss. And so, if we look real briefly at what we know of as the 5 stages of grief and some of the questions that go along with that, these may be familiar to you. So, things like denial, shock, avoidance, disorientation, things like, this isn't really happening. I can't believe this. Feelings of anger, anxiety, or fear, anger about imposed disruptions, restrictions, loss of control, the fact that we can't go out or do things as we normally would or connect with people in ways that we normally would can be part of this phase. Anger towards decision makers, politicians, health authorities, YSU, administrators, faculty about what we're asking of you at this point. Um, Health and safety concerns for yourselves or other people could be a piece of this. Another stage is bargaining, that negotiating or trying to negotiate a change. Okay, so if we self quarantine or if we self isolate for a certain number of days, this will help squash the curve. Therefore, we're going to get out of this sooner. Those are thoughts that we go through in order to try to make sense of what's happening to us or to cope with what's happening. Feelings of depression. So, sadness about an abrupt change. All of us 3 weeks ago were, I was in my office meeting with students in person. You all were in classes or going to work in person. Our lives were very different. And so, the changes and losses around milestones, celebrations, future plans, relationships, sense of safety, frankly, how we conducted our lives was very different. A final stage of grief is reconciliation, making meaning, being able to pivot, plan, grow from this. Now, these stages are not linear, they don't happen lockstep, but I'm guessing that in hearing some of those thoughts and feelings, you could relate to at least pieces of this. That might be a way to, again, understand some of what's going on. Okay, so how do you know what's normal? First of all, let's acknowledge everybody's experience is different. What I'm going through in my life and in my home may be very different than what some of you are going through out there. So, whether or not somebody experiences a quarter life crisis or how they experience it is going to be really different. So, normal is going to have a lot of different variations. One of the ways to try to understand or tease out what might be abnormal or unhealthy would be, how long and how much do these thoughts and feelings and experiences interfere with your daily function? So that's really in the professional world, how in psychology, how we understand what might be normal, which is a big range, and what would be abnormal or unhealthy. It's how much does it interfere or impact in a negative way your daily life and your function. Stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to talk about how can you manage what you're experiencing.